So Nate and I have talked about adoption since we've first been married. We felt God just putting that desire on both of our hearts. And there's a verse that always comes to mind, which is Psalms 86:11. It says, "Teach me your way, O Lord, and I will walk in your truth. Give me an undivided heart that I may fear your name." And I think we both love that verse because it talks about an undivided heart, and that means doing whatever God wants you to do, whatever He calls you to do. And for us, that was adoption. And so we started this journey, and there were some obstacles that were in the way. One of them was financial.
Really, the adoption route was what we wanted to do. It was what we wanted to do, and what God wanted us to do, but how were we going to do it? Financially, it wasn't going to come into play. We didn't have the money. We had just went through having to sell our home and go through that whole thing. Some things happened at work that
You took a pay cut.
Took a pay cut, and it was one of those things that financially we had no idea how we could possibly do it.
So being that financial was our biggest obstacle, I was at lunch one day talking with a friend, and we were just discussing some of the struggles we were going through financially, and that I really felt God calling us to adopt, but I didn't know how that was going to happen. And she said, "Well, I think that you should start now." And her and her husband decided that they were going to give us the funds to start the adoptions. So I felt like that was God saying, you know, it's time to start now. It's time to start.
The financial side of things really shouldn't slow anyone or stop anyone from going through this process. Like Jen said, we didn't have the funds to do this when we started, and when it came down to it, again, the flood doors just opened. People came out of nowhere and just were so generous.
God would literally give us what we needed down to the penny sometimes. And our very first fundraiser we had, it was a fundraiser my mom, my mother-in-law, and my sister hosted for us. And it was a jewelry party fundraiser. And it was I guess it was a cash for gold party. And we had to have in $3,000 for our dossier. And when we got to the end of this party, there was $2,900, and we needed $100 more to be able to send in this dossier. And by the end of that week, we had received another check in the mail for $100. So we had the full $3,000 to send in for the dossier. And that's how it continued for the rest of our adoption. Literally every penny was there when we needed it.
God opened doors before we even got to him.
He did. He kept, the doors just kept flying open. And we got a phone call one day for someone that we knew that decided to give us $10,000.
The neat part is people get to help out. The people that get to help out, they're helping out for a little girl that they're going to see grow up. They're going to get to be a part of her life. She had told me that day that, you know, hopefully we're going to get this call. We were waiting. She said, when you get that call at work, or when you get that call from me, you better get your butt home, because we want to look at this picture together. So that's what we agreed upon, and that's what she did. I got that call, I think it was like around 11 o'clock in the morning or so, and she's like, "Come home, we have it. They just sent it over. Hurry, because I need to open this email." So I got home, and I think we prayed about it before we looked at it, and because we had 24 hours to decide whether this is the child that is, you know, right for us. And so we prayed about it. We fasted about it. We had friends fasting about it, and we opened up the picture, and she's beautiful. She when we opened up the email, we looked at her, and it had all her information, and it was pretty much all in Chinese at first, and we're trying to go through it, and we're like, what does all this mean? And you see her picture at the bottom, and it was amazing. I mean, she was perfect. Her smile, everything about her was great. So
well, and the cool part is up at the top of this file was this little black and white photo. And, and they told us there was only one picture.
Yeah, so we're like, oh, well, we're going to get this little black and white photo.
So we're trying to analyze this little picture. And then we go through and we're reading through her whole file, and we get all the way down to the bottom, and this full screen size picture comes up.
Yeah, so it's a full photo of her, and then we started after we, at first you're like, oh, that's it, that's perfect, she's the one, but there was still a lot, to go through and make sure. And
at that moment, at that computer screen, it was just Nate and I up there, looking at her picture, and we both held hands and we prayed, and I don't think the two of us could barely get a word out as we're praying over this little girl. We just could barely even speak. The flood of emotions that came through the two of us at that moment when you're looking at this picture and saying, that's my daughter, and both of us knew. I think as soon as we went to pray at that moment, we both just knew. We both just knew.
Yeah.
The whole 6 months before we left, it was just, we had 6 months that we had her picture. And so, the boys had her picture in their rooms, and we had them all over the house, and all of our extended family had her pictures everywhere, and just the anticipation and waiting for different things. And the big phone call you get is the phone call for your LOA, which is your letter of acceptance. When we got that phone call, I remember being at Cameron, which is our younger son. We were at his game, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and I look down and I see it's our agency, and I knew why they were calling, because they wouldn't call for any other reason. And I think I screamed or something, and I grabbed the phone and I said, "Are you calling me with good news?" And she said, "Yes, I am, it's here." So I got off the phone and burst into tears, because I knew it was about 8 weeks till I'd see my daughter.
What are you packing for?
Packing for China.
Why are you going to China?
To get our baby girl.
Get your baby girl.
Yes.
13 hours from now, we'll be in Beijing. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'm shaking at this point. I think he was too, weren't you shaking?
Yeah.
We were just shaking, and we grabbed everything and got in the car and headed over, and we went to the Civil Affairs office, and there we were waiting.
Every time the door would ring, you'd hear the elevator out in the hallway, and we were sitting there waiting on the edge of our seats, just so excited. We had the video camera in our hands, and we'd hear the elevator door, the bell would go off, and we'd be like, oh, here she comes, and it would come in and it would be somebody else, or it would come in and it would be one of the workers at the place. We're like, oh. Yeah. So finally, I think the 4th time or so, we got the video camera on, and Jen kept nudging me saying, make sure you have it on, make sure it's ready, make sure it's on. And we had it on, and there she walked through the door with her nanny.
It was a surreal moment. Yeah. She walked in with her nanny, and she had a very solemn, serious, look on her face. And
what's going on?
Yeah, couldn't figure it all out. And we walked over to her, and I just started rubbing her back, and handed her. We had a little baby doll that her grandma had sent over, and we showed her little baby, and she did touch that. And then they handed her to me first, and I, held her, and she kind of arched her back and started screaming. And most people, I guess, would think, oh, I'd be disappointed that they were screaming, but they actually say that's a great thing, because it means that they are attached to someone else, and that you're taking them, and they have emotions and feelings. And so she started screaming, and then she'd calm down a little bit and scream a little more, and then Nate took her, and
she screamed bloody murder. I took her out in the hallway, and when we were walking out in the hallway, we passed her nanny, and her nanny was out in the hallway just bawling and crying and sobbing. This nanny had taken such good care of her, and loved her. Yeah, and loved her.
And I think my emotions hit me when we got into the car. Because we got into the car and she had stopped all of her screaming and thrashing, and I just was holding her on my lap and just rocking her back and forth to try and soothe her, and she was just had this like soft whimper, and you know, I was overwhelmed at that point with just such love for this little girl, and we had been given a gift in this bag that we hadn't looked at, and we pulled it out, and here it was a photo album of her from the time she was a month old, and it was every step of the way really until we were able to get her. They had Christmas and birthdays in there that they had celebrated with her, and it was just little pieces of her life that we had in this photo album, and that's a gift that not everybody is able to get. And just looking through these pictures, again, just the emotions were just so high at that point, because, you know, I'm looking at this little girl who is my child that God has given me, and I get to see these pieces of her life, you know, and it just was such a blessing to have that. So I think the emotions definitely hit the biggest for me when we got into that car to leave with her. It's like, she's mine. Like, you know, I get to take her home now, and I get to take care of her, and, you know, she's ours, and we get to be her parents now, and she's no longer just in these pictures. She's a sweetheart. Hello.
Love you.
She's having a little bit of a harder day today. Very sad today.
She loves Mama.
She's a sweet girl. There were some ups and downs those first few days, but we slowly started to see this little girl emerge and this personality come out. And she had this hysterical strut that she would do down the hallway. It was so funny. She was little Miss Sassy and confident, and she would just strut her way down the hallway.
She walked herself all over the hotel, said hi to everyone, and it was the neatest thing to see.
Just to see this little girl, this personality just come out more and more and more. When we got home, everybody was waiting at the airport. The boys were, and my parents and Nate's parents were waiting there, and that was a sweet moment. And she was happy as could be. You know, we just felt like that was such a blessing, because she smiled at her brothers, and she actually hugged them both, and she had been talking to them on Skype, so she had seen them several times.
When we first got home, though, we pulled in the driveway, and there was friends and family and balloon. It was great.
They had a driveway party.
Yeah.
And they did a driveway party so that way they wouldn't infringe on her space when she
her home,
when she came home, and so she could just come into the house and take it all in. Bringing Haley into our lives, it's stretched our boys, Aiden and Cameron, as well. But I think that's a good thing, because I think so many times anymore we get this picture of the American dream, and we have these perfect little lives with our kids and our house and we don't want anything to disrupt that. And when you do choose to adopt a child, they can come with different emotional issues and struggles that they go through, but you have to get that image of that perfect little life out of your head and realize it's not about that. It's about, you know, helping this little girl and making a difference in her life. And it's been a positive change for our boys, because they're giving of themselves. They have to give of themselves to somebody else and show her grace when she's struggling through. And, you know, I think it's been a really good thing, and it's stretched them in ways that I think will make them better as they get older, and more compassionate for people and understanding of people.
I love you.
She makes her brothers laugh a lot too. Her favorite thing to do is tell them to go sit time out.
To think 6 months ago she was in an orphanage. You know, today she's now riding a bike outside. She's, you know, running and playing and talking and speaking. And 6 months ago she was in China. It was amazing to think about.
Most of all, I feel now a responsibility to teach her to become a woman of God, and that's what I want her to see in me. And that's what I want to teach her. And I love the saying that you weren't born from my womb, but you were born in my heart. And that's truly how I feel about her. I feel like, you know, even though I wasn't the one who gave birth to her, she is just as much my daughter as my boys are my sons, and I feel no difference. I love her just the same as I love them, and I just feel privileged and blessed that I get to be your mom.
We're just so blessed. I don't see her as my Chinese daughter. I see her as my daughter. That's all there is to it. So, sorry, but